you from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier and now 7-time award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, and certainly the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate Hispanic conservative. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Hope you're all well here during the month of October. Again, I'm still rocking pink here as we are raising awareness for breast cancer on behalf of the American Cancer Society and also making strides against breast cancer. As a side note, last week's event at Son Cubano, despite the rain, brought out an amazing turnout for the 15th edition of A Professor's Quest to Save Breasts. I want to thank all of my hosts, as well as the staff at Son Cubano, our amazing sponsors, our DJ, and really everyone in attendance for helping to make the event an overwhelming success, as hopefully together we'll defeat breast cancer once and for all. Of course, there's a lot on my mind, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's start off with a story that emanates out of Jersey City, but really it's a statewide type of discussion. And a special thank you to John Hines with Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, according to downtown Ward E Councilman James Solomon, the recent $925,000 settlement for a man who got his jaw broken at the hands of a Jersey City police officer shows the need for a CCRB, a Civilian Complaint Review Board. So let me just give you some quotes here, which really makes the story quite interesting. Now, the council is being asked to authorize a nearly $1 million settlement for misconduct when an officer broke the jaw of a civilian. Very concerning. I think it highlights the fact that we need independent oversight on the police force. Again, something that the councilman put out on an Instagram live video prior to last week's council meeting. He also went on to say, quote, "I know it's not much in the news as it was a year or two ago, but the state needs to pass a Civilian Complaint Review Board bill, which provides for independent oversight to make sure that investigations and discipline occur from civilians, not fellow law enforcement." And this is just another example of taxpayer costs added to that. Now, again, what's interesting, when you look at it, at that same meeting where the council approved the affordable housing overlay, they also voted unanimously 9-0 in favor of a $925,000 settlement, once again, for Jonathan Sanders, to settle a federal lawsuit that he suffered facial fractions and a broken jaw on May the 5th in the year 2017. The resolution did say that the settlement would be less costly than indeed if the city went to trial. Now, the Corporation Council had recommended a settlement to pay the plaintiff a total sum of $925,000 because the risk and costs involved with conducting a trial includes the possibility of a verdict that includes compensatory damages and counsel fees exceeding the settlement amount. The measure also said that the Jersey City Insurance Fund Commission would cover the cost of the settlement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what's interesting about the councilman is he's also one of these progressives that during the summer of 2020, right, when leftists and progressives like him were screaming to defund the police, right, as we all know what an asinine moniker that turned out to be, right, because when we think about it, on the south side of Jersey City, the west side or whatever, that's where police presence is probably needed the most in Jersey, not in the ritzy bougie downtown ward where he serves, but maybe along, again, the south side and also along the west side where there are shootings and murders almost happening nightly on the south side of Jersey City. So again, the councilman tends to be a little myopic when it comes to things like this, but really, listen, I don't disagree with the creation of a CCRB. I know it's being discussed at the state level. I know that Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin has voiced some concerns about it. And certainly, it was in the pipeline in the summer of 2021. Now, why it didn't get passed? Of course, it was an election year, and you know fully well that no Democrat in the Assembly or in the state Senate was even going to try to pass a bill like this, knowing full well the backlash from the public. Because while the governor, a.k.a. the emperor, Phil Murphy, has armed security around him 24/7, and so do many legislators, regular people like you and I don't have that sort of affordability. More on that later when it comes to sort of punitive gun control measures that are pervasive in New Jersey. But again, folks, when we talk about the CCRB, we talk about a body that's ultimately going to have oversight, as the councilman alluded to, but more importantly, it's going to have subpoena power. And that's where my concern comes in. Not that I don't trust people like James Solomon. He's a fellow academic. I mean, we differ on everything politically and ideologically, and that's fine. I don't need everyone to agree with me. But what bothers me is the company you keep, James. And during that summer of 2020, you had no problem going out to all of these rallies, whether it was hosted by insufferable left-wing race-baiting groups like Black Men United and others that were all about defund, 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 when we all know, ladies and gentlemen, you can word a movement and or a statement better. Now, was that on purpose? Was it intentional? I mean, you decide. I don't know. I know how I feel about where leftists and progressives and all the social justice clowns and all the woke fools and all the compassion mongers were leaning towards during the summer of 2020. And I get it. There was outcry nationally about the murder at the hands of a police officer of a career criminal. That's what George Floyd was, folks. I hate to break it to you. You know what? I know people get all triggered and salty, but that's the truth, okay? You got a criminal record about as long as my jacket sleeve. But that's not the point. The point is that during that summer, we saw BLM, thugs, and derelicts destroy cities, burn down businesses, and loot townships all throughout the country, right? Now, what's interesting is, of course, when it was the whole defund, defund, defund the police movement, right, headed by then candidate Joe Biden, then vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris, two of the most useless humans you'll ever see. But of course, many prominent Democrats and many on the left, also in the media, that were crying for defund the police. As we all know, that policy was about as intellectually myopic as a lot of what the left usually espouses on a daily basis. But my concern about the CCRB is who's going to be on the CCRB. Now, maybe this is just the snob in me. Maybe this is just the academic in me. Maybe this is just my usual smug, condescending, arrogant, cocky sort of persona. But no, folks, I'm going to be real with you for a second. I want people that are qualified to be in a CCRB. I don't want local activists. I don't want, again, the local social justice clowns that go on social media or oversee some of these like insufferable organizations, whether it's Black Men United, whether it's, for example, these other left-wing organizations that coddle illegals, right? Like the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, right? It's clown of an executive director like Amy Torres, activists, no, or even more so, failed congressional candidates. Like, you know what we're talking about, right? You know, Chiquitín, you know, Shorty Rock, you know, Hector Soso-Guerra. Oh, Segura, I call him Soso-Guerra because that's what his policies are predicated on. But whether it's Hector or Amy or James or the rest of the Lollipop Guild that subscribes to this madness, I think we've all learned that defunding the police was the wrong message. But unfortunately, the people that I just named associate with people that are just as intellectually bankrupt as they are, if not worse. And these are probably the people that they want on a CCRB. No, ladies and gentlemen, who I want on these civilian complaint review boards are academics, professionals, whether it be in the criminal justice field or the legal field, either prosecutors, former defense attorneys, probation officers, like I was once, okay, corrections officers, which I was once, maybe criminal investigators on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender, which I was once one of those, okay, or, you know, academics, professors, scholars, people who understand the criminal justice system, people who understand the dynamics of what goes into not just punishment being punitive, but also having a component of rehabilitation to it as well. I don't want just like some ham and egger off the street, some regular Joe Schmo, some jabroni that marches on, I don't know, Martin Luther King Drive or down Kennedy Boulevard and wants to say, well, defund the police and all police are bad and pigs this and, you know, police that. No, I don't need to hear people like that anywhere near a civilian complaint review board. They can be outside, maybe watering the, you know, the garden or something. Maybe they can go to, maybe get some candy or something at a vending machine, but they have no business being anywhere near these boards, and especially giving them subpoena power. Folks, this is a serious matter. Let me say this as well. I'm someone who defends law enforcement repeatedly. I've backed the blue for as long as I can remember. But I also understand that in every profession, whether it be doctors, lawyers, judges, teachers, academics, even journalists, there's always bad apples in every profession. I talk about it all the time. And police work and law enforcement is no different. Now, again, I can support police and support these brave men and women that put on a uniform, that defend our communities, that keep us safe, that protect us, but I can also be about accountability. See, folks, you can do the two things together. It seems like we're living, again, in this time of tribalism where you have to be either one or the other when it comes to how to perceive or conceptualize what is good law enforcement. No, ladies and gentlemen. And again, maybe this is me being the snobby academic in me, but you can do the two things separately. You can hold police accountable, but at the same time, you can also be supportive of their efforts because what they do is a dangerous job. And I know a lot of you are going to say, well, they signed up for that, Fernando. They chose to put their lives on the line. Fair enough. But it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be bestowed enormous amount of respect for what they're doing. Okay? And that's all I'm saying. Let's respect the police. Let's respect law enforcement. But by the same token, let's also have some accountability. CCRB is a good idea, but let's be careful of who we put on it. Do you trust people like James Solomon? Or do you trust intellectually honest academics like myself that aren't going to be sort of overly partisan and put left-wing hacks on a CCRB like I think James Solomon would? Folks, I think proof of the pudding is there. I get it. He's popular in his ward, and a lot of people that live downtown in Jersey City acquiesce to all the woke nonsense that James Solomon likes to convey. But if you want real-world, commonsensical, rational, logical type of, thought processes prevailing here, trust me, you don't want anybody that I just mentioned on a CCRB. You probably want more people like myself and others that take the process seriously. As for the others, I don't think they will. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Staying on the topic of law enforcement and keeping our community safe, I want to thank Sophie Nieto Munoz from the New Jersey Monitor for her report on this story. By the way, she's such a smoke show. I just love looking at her. But again, that's the topic for another day. And very interesting article by Sophie talking about New Jersey Democrats in the legislature proposing expansive gun control measures. Now, the measure would limit where guns can be carried and expand the list of people who can't get gun permits ultimately. So here's some information which I think makes the story very significant. Now, New Jersey lawmakers unveiled a measure last week intended to tighten gun laws in New Jersey in response to the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision as it pertains about expanding the rights of people to carry guns in public. Now, the bill will prohibit guns in 25 categories of public areas in New Jersey, which include government buildings, schools, casinos, sporting arenas, bars, childcare centers, parks, hospitals, beaches, and college campuses. It would also require gun owners to obtain insurance and complete safety training to carry a firearm. I mean, that seems a little overly expansive, but okay. And certainly State Senate President Nicholas Scutari, a Democrat out of Union County, went on to say last week, quote, "We believe this strikes the right balance," this total BS, by the way, "to allow for constitutionally allowable gun carry, but not just anywhere you want it to be and not just for any person." Assemblyman Joe Danielson, also a Democrat from Middlesex County, an avid recreational hunter and gun owner, said New Jersey will remain one of the safest states in the country, in large part due to bills like the one that was unveiled last week. That's also BS there, Joe. New Jersey has the third lowest rate of gun violence in America, according to the Giffords Law Center. Well, first of all, the Giffords Law Center is about as partisan as it gets. And as it pertains to the lowest rate of gun violence, at least third lowest in the country, I don't know who's doing the study? Stevie Wonder? Like, who's monitoring the data for, the Giffords Law Center? Like Matt Murdock, right? The character in Daredevil in the MCU. I mean, folks, go to Newark, go to Trenton, Camden, Elizabeth, the south side of Jersey City. I mean, these are heavily and densely populated areas of New Jersey, and they have gun violence almost nightly. So for the Giffords Law Center to say that New Jersey has the third lowest rate of gun violence in this country, I think is absolute BS. I could say something else, but again, I have to keep this a PG show. Danielson also wanted to say, quote, "For me as a responsible law-abiding citizen, this bill changes very little. For millions, this bill provides the safety without causing constitutional conflict. The bill will provide options for not only citizens with guns, but let's remember, the citizens without guns." Now, New York passed a similar legislation 3 months ago, to no surprise with Kathy Hochul, an anti-gun person, that has already been struck down by a federal judge who said it would be unconstitutional to prohibit guns in so-called, quote, sensitive areas like Times Square. Now, the judge ruled the law can remain in effect while the case is appealed. Now, New Jersey, again, is already home to some of the strongest gun laws in the country, which have been strengthened, unfortunately, due to the emperor, Phil Murphy, since he took office in January of 2018. Now, Teresa Turner, the co-lead of the state chapter of Moms Demand Action, said the new legislation is the best solution that our legislature could come up with. I think it's going to be really, really effective. Now, also, During that press conference, Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin went on to say, quote, the legislation will almost certainly face legal challenges, but called it morally right. No, Craig, it's not morally right, because what you're doing is you're circumventing federal law again, as deduced by the U.S. Supreme Court this summer. All right. Also, for example, another interesting quote this week by Sophie in her column was from Scott Back, the executive director of the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, which called the proposal a big middle finger to the U.S. Supreme Court. These lawmakers have no respect for the Constitution or the rule of law. They focus on attacking citizens' rights while setting violent criminals free, which is true, with awful bail reform provisions and everything else. We look forward to overturning these measures in court and forcing the state to pay our legal fees. According to the draft of the bill, the measure would remove the, quote, justifiable need standard to carry a weapon in New Jersey, a standard similar to the one the Supreme Court in June declared it to be unconstitutional. Now, lawmakers in Trenton want a 60-day vetting process to determine who can obtain concealed carry permits. To apply for a permit, ultimately, folks, people would have to undergo an interview with the local chief of police and submit 5 non-family references. The bill would also expand the disqualifying criteria that would prohibit someone from owning a gun to include people who have violated restraining orders, have outstanding warrants, and are convicted of fourth-degree crimes. Well, folks, it never ceases to amaze me about people on the left, and especially legislators like Nicholas Scutari, Craig Coughlin, and certainly the emperor himself, Phil Murphy, here in New Jersey, making it just even more difficult for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. Now, let me say this. Again, I respect the police, but we know the police times can vary, okay? And to limit a citizen's right to protect themselves in their home, I think is unconscionable. And for Craig Coughlin to talk about something being morally right, no, Craig. What's morally right is allowing law-abiding citizens like myself, who got his permit, all right, who got everything done correctly, checked out, and obviously able to carry a firearm and own a firearm. So I'm proud of that because I'm a law-abiding citizen, because I believe, again, that the right should not be infringed upon. For some reason, Scutari and Coughlin didn't get that memo, or maybe they skipped that part of law school, okay, when reading about the Bill of Rights during their constitutional law class. And of course, the governor, needless to say, we know the governor struggles with the Bill of Rights to begin with, right? We learned that during COVID, okay? But the idea of trying to make law-abiding citizens have to jump through even more hoops is ridiculous. The Supreme Court, see, it's funny, it's interesting, how leftists and Democrats want to honor the Supreme Court and their decisions when it suits them, right? And they'll make a meltdown of it. Oh, well, this is a constitutionally protected right. We need to have marches and have meltdowns. Isn't it funny about those on the left all summer and into the fall now? Like insufferable feminists and all these cat ladies that stink of cat piss, bitching and moaning about, well, I'm just mad because I can't terminate a pregnancy in states that I don't live in. I mean, again, folks, this is how myopic the left is. And they'll march up and down streets and have rallies and talk about, the infringement of reproductive rights, which is, there's no such thing in New Jersey, right? Because we know that if you're a woman, for example, and if you want to terminate your pregnancy tomorrow, you can do that. There are plenty of clinics sponsored by Planned Parenthood or others that are supported by federal tax dollars and state tax dollars. So again, if you get knocked up tomorrow, sweetheart, you have options. Okay? Whether it was during the summer, right, single girl summer, or now that the NFL is back and we have NFL Sunday Fun Day, and ladies all over New Jersey normally make a lot of bad decisions with alcohol, and they wake up Monday morning probably next to someone that they don't like, guess what? They have access to a Plan B. Okay? That's not infringed upon. And that's okay. All right? So the idea about your constitutional right, which again is not something that was ever codified, right, anywhere in the Constitution, but in the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment is. So you know what? You want to be equally outraged about, my constitutional right to my body. Well, you should be as equally outraged, all right, at Craig Coughlin, at Nicholas Scutari, at Phil Murphy, and other leftists in New Jersey that want to make it more difficult for you because while they're getting protected by armed security, you're not. So for those on the left that want to be all up in arms about, my constitutional rights, be consistent. I know consistency is a really difficult word for a lot of you on the left, but be consistent. If you want us to be outraged about, hey, your reproductive rights, well, guess what? Be outraged when I'm screaming about my gun rights as a law-abiding citizen. But again, folks, here in New Jersey, it's just becoming more and more difficult for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. And you know what? Quite frankly, that's quite criminal. Another important story for your consideration, and once again, a special thank you to Sophie Nieto Munoz, Total Smoke Show at the New Jersey Monitor, for exceptional reporting on this story, where sexual assault victims will be updated on criminal cases under a pending bill in the state legislature. So let me just give you some details here, what I think are really important. A bill that will require sexual assault survivors to be notified of developments in their case will be heard by lawmakers coming up later this week. Now, the measure, titled A2818, would require law enforcement agencies to notify victims where DNA is obtained from processing evidence in the case and whether the DNA profile has been entered into record or held for retention for case evidence. Now, ultimately, victims will also be notified when evidence is submitted to a forensic laboratory and if that evidence is compared against a data bank. Now, again, folks, it's really, really important to understand that if there is a match for the assailant, law enforcement will be required to notify victims according to this bill. Now, Assemblywoman Carol Murphy, a Democrat out of Burlington County, all the way in South Jersey, which was the primary sponsor of the legislation, said victims have a right to know when their assailant is identified and what is happening with their case. She wanted to say in a statement this week, victims of sexual assault relive their experience long after the assault occurs, and many undergo invasive examinations to recover evidence only to be left in the dark concerning the status of their cases. In order for victims to heal, evidence and information is powerful. The bill notes also that even if a sexual assault victim is not notified of developments in a case, it would not have an impact on a conviction or a sentence. Now, similarly, though, in Pennsylvania in 2019, a law was passed requiring victims to be notified of the status of their sexual assault evidence kit and ensuring that they are not charged for any cost related to their kit or for testing. Now, subsequently, the New Jersey bill is set to be heard in the Assembly in their Public Safety Committee coming up later this week. A Senate companion bill has also been introduced, but has not yet gone up for a hearing. Once again, Sophie Nieto Munoz, great reporting on this story. And folks, I'm all for that. I'm kind of surprised, though, that it's taken this long for this sort of mechanism to be in place. And we all know that sexual assault is still a very serious problem, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the country. And we all know that it's been in the headlines in recent years, right? Especially in the Murphy administration early on with the Katie Brennan situation and other unfortunate incidents. So hopefully this is a bill that passes quite expediently in the state assembly, in the state senate, and subsequently can be signed by Governor Murphy. I don't disagree with the premise of the bill, and I think it's a good first step in making sure that victims can get some closure, and even before that, an update of what's going on with their cases. You know, I can't even imagine, and my heart goes out to the victims of sexual assault for the pain that they go through every single day. It certainly is not easy. We've heard of horror stories all throughout New Jersey and all throughout the country. But ultimately, folks, it's legislation like this, good legislation for once, coming out of Trenton that goes a long way in helping people every single day. Bringing it back locally to Hudson County's largest city, Jersey City. Once again, I want to thank John Hines with his report on this story. When it comes to Hudson County politicians, though, at times the legal system may move at a snail's pace. Now, we've seen a few months after Senator Cunningham's DWI was dismissed in May, more than a year after she was charged, it seems like Jersey City Councilwoman Amy DeGee's hit-and-run case is also enduring similar delays. Now, it's coming up on 3 months since July the 19th when the famous incident went viral. We've all seen it, whether on YouTube, social media, HUDpost, Hudson County View, Talk on the Hudson, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, you name it, it's been everywhere, where she struck a cyclist and kept going. Now, the first year at-large councilwoman still has not made her first court appearance. And again, it's a brief hearing that will ultimately determine that the defendant hears the charges again and ultimately will plead not guilty. Certainly because of her father being the county executive and certainly her standing in Jersey City, the case will not be heard here in Hudson County. It will be heard in Essex County. Now, again, various news outlets have been reporting that no such court date is yet still in effect. It's almost October. Really, it's almost Halloween just in a couple of weeks. I don't know what's going to be happening with this case, but it'll be very, very interesting. In addition, Amy was also cited with 2 other motor vehicle violations, failure to report an accident and leaving the scene of an accident. She also declined on the delay recently. Now, the cyclist, Andrew Black, who was struck while running a red light on Martin Luther King Drive and Forest Street, did indeed suffer minor injuries that day. In an interview shortly after the hit and run, Black said he was considering a lawsuit against DeGee's, but nothing has been filed as of yet. A search of the court's electronic databases does demonstrate that nothing has been filed. Black and his attorney have also declined to comment. Now, as I mentioned, the Jesus case was transferred from the Jersey Municipal Court to the Essex County Special Remand Court, which is a part of the Essex County Superior Court system, to avoid a conflict of interest, again, because of her status within the city. The Jesus attorney, John Lynch, could not be reached for comment. Now, Jersey spokeswoman Kimberly Wallace Scaloni deferred questions on any investigation to the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, but she noted that the Jersey Police Department, quote, investigated the motor vehicle accident, issued the appropriate summonses, and sent all findings to the court themselves. Folks, I've talked about this at length. Let the process play itself out. I'm a friend of Amy's. She's a friend of mine. I've always been consistent on this issue. I'm not a fan of cyclists. I think they're a nuisance to the road. I think we've all seen how many of them don't obey traffic laws and just seem to think that they own the roads. Now, unfortunately, I feel bad for what happened to Andrew Black, but again, he took a red light. So, I mean, how much more sympathy you want out of me, I don't know. But again, let the process play itself out. But we've seen a lot of virtue signaling. We have seen a lot of just vitriol and heat levied at Amy DeGise, her father, her family, her colleagues, and everyone who's associated with Amy DeGise for taking a stand just to stand up for her. I don't throw dirt on my friends. I let the process play itself out in court. That's what's going to happen. When it does, I don't know. Hopefully, it happens soon. But of course, it won't stop people from always opining on what's going on with Amy DeGise, Andrew Black, and certainly how we look at cyclists each and every day. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. And also make sure you like the Hudson Media Group on their YouTube page and follow it as well. Just click the subscribe button and you'll be obviously having access to all the great content brought to you by the Hudson Media Group. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and, of course, follow them on both Instagram and Twitter. Check out my own Instagram and Twitter, folks. It's the same handle, @TheFernandoZone. And also make sure you like me on Facebook. You can't miss me. I'm the handsome, photogenic journalist right there with the wonderful new headshot there. And not just only the Fernando Uribe page, but the backup page, the Fernando Uribe Jr. page, because, of course, we all know how Facebook likes to sort of shadow ban conservatives. I have to be a little resourceful in getting my content out. Make sure you also follow Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe on Instagram. And, of course, make sure you like the page on Facebook as well. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier and now 7-time award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, as well as being the Garden State's most beloved and factually accurate Hispanic conservative, coming to you every single week right here on YouTube via the Hudson Media Group. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying so long, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great rest of your week. And as always, thank you so much for watching.